Yulina was different from the other girls in her village. She was beautiful, too beautiful. Her long black hair shone under the sun, and her green eyes sparkled like emeralds. Men could not look at her without feeling weak in their knees. But Lina was quiet. She did not laugh with the other girls. She did not dance at festivals. She stayed away from men's eyes, hiding behind her mother's shadow. "Lina, why don't you speak to the boys?" her friend Mira asked one day. Lina only smiled. "I am not ready," she said. But deep inside she knew the truth. One day, a stranger came to the village. His name was Daniel. He was tall, strong, and handsome. He had traveled from a faraway land, looking for adventure. But when he saw Lina, he stopped. His heart raced. "Who is she?" he asked an old man. "That is Lina," the old man said. "She is the most beautiful girl in our village, but no man has ever touched her." Daniel was curious. Why did Lina stay away from men? Was she shy? Or was there another reason? The next day he walked to her house. He brought flowers and knocked on the door. Lina's mother opened it and saw the young man. She frowned. "What do you want?" "I want to meet Lina," Daniel said. "I want to know her." Lina stood behind her mother, looking at him. Something about Daniel made her heart beat faster. He was different from the other men. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Lina sat by the window, watching the village come to life. The market was busy. Children laughed as they ran through the streets, and women carried baskets of fresh fruit. But Lina's heart was heavy. Since the day Daniel knocked on her door, she had not stopped thinking about him. No man had ever looked at her the way he did. His dark eyes held something different. Curiosity, kindness, and something else she could not name. Her mother's voice broke her thoughts. "You must be careful, Lina," she said. "Love is dangerous." Lina frowned. "Why, mother? Do you not want me to be happy?" Her mother sighed and touched her daughter's face. "Happiness is not always safe." Before Lina could ask more, a knock sounded at the door. Her mother opened it, and there stood Daniel, holding a single red rose. "For you," he said, offering the flower to Lina. She hesitated, then took it. The petals were soft, like whispers of a secret she did not yet understand. "May I walk with you?" Daniel asked. Lina glanced at her mother, who gave a slow nod. "Just for a little while," she said. As they walked through the village, Daniel asked questions. "What do you love most about this place?" Lina thought for a moment. "The river," she said. "It is quiet, peaceful. Will you take me there?" She hesitated, but something about Daniel made her say yes. By the river they sat in silence. The water shimmered under the sun. Birds sang in the trees. Daniel turned to her. "Why do you stay away from men?" Lina's breath caught. She stopped. The words felt heavy, locked inside her heart. Daniel reached for her hand. "You can tell me." Lina wanted to, but she couldn't. Not yet. Lina pulled her hand away, her heart pounding. The warmth of Daniel's touch lingered on her skin, but fear crept into her chest. She could not tell him. She could not tell anyone. "Lina," Daniel said gently, "whatever it is, I will understand." She looked at him, wanting to believe his words. But how could he understand? How could anyone? The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the river. The air felt heavy. Lina stood up. "I should go home," she said. Daniel sighed but nodded. "Let me walk you back." As they walked, silence stretched between them. Daniel did not press her for answers, and Lina was grateful. But she knew this could not last forever. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Memories flooded her mind. Her mother's warnings, the fear in her heart, the truth she could never escape. She knew she had to push Daniel away. It was the only way to keep him safe. But fate had other plans. The next day, Daniel knocked on her door again. This time he carried a small wooden box. "I brought you something," he said. Lina hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a tiny pendant shaped like a star. "My mother gave it to me before she died," Daniel said. She told me to give it to someone special. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, come away with me, he said suddenly. Marry me. Lena's breath caught. I can't. Will never look at me the same way again. I don't care, Daniel said. I love you, Lena. Lena closed her eyes. The moment had come. The truth had to be spoken. She took a deep breath and whispered the words that would change everything. Lena's heart pounded as she looked into Daniel's deep brown eyes. She wanted to believe he would understand. She wanted to believe love could conquer all. Taking a shaky breath, she finally spoke. My love is dangerous, she whispered. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Lena clenched her hands. There is something about me that you do not know. If I marry you, if we are together, something terrible will happen. Daniel stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. Lena, I don't care about anything else. I love you. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't understand, Daniel. She stopped. How could she explain? How could she make him see the truth without losing him? Daniel took her hand. Tell me, Lena. No matter what it is, I will stay. Lena looked up at him, searching his face for doubt. But he was steady, strong. Her lips trembled. If a man shares my bed, he turns to stone. Silence. Daniel blinked. What? Lena's hands tightened into fists. It's a curse. I don't know how or why. But if we ever, her voice broke. He will turn to stone. Daniel took a step back. His face was unreadable. Lena, this can't be true. She nodded slowly. It is. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. But how? My mother warned me since I was a child. I have never, she stopped, feeling her cheeks burn. I have never been with a man. Because I know what will happen. Daniel was silent for a long time. The wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, its song lonely and sad. Finally he spoke. There must be a way to break it. Lena shook her head. Oh, there is no way. Daniel looked at her. His expression unreadable. So you have never tried? Lena's stomach twisted. Would you risk your life to test it? Daniel exhaled slowly. He was quiet, thinking. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. Lena, I am not afraid. Her breath caught. You should be. But Daniel took her hands again, squeezing them gently. Love you. And I will not leave you. Not for any curse. Tears slipped down Lena's face. She wanted to believe him. But deep down, she knew love was not enough to stop fate. And fate was cruel. The stars glittered above as Lena sat by the window, her hands shaking in her lap. The village was quiet, the sound of crickets filling the night air. But inside her heart, a storm raged. Daniel's words repeated in her mind. Love you, and I will not leave you, not for any curse. Could she believe him? Could she allow herself to love him, knowing what would happen? A soft knock at the door made her jump. She knew it was him before she even opened it. Daniel stood there, his dark eyes full of warmth. Lena, he whispered. She swallowed. You shouldn't be here. I had to see you. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I don't care about the curse, Lena. I love you. Tears burned in her eyes. But you should care. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. What if there is a way? What if the curse only works if you believe in it? Lena shook her head. It's real, Daniel. My mother told me. It has happened before. He frowned. To who? Lena hesitated. I don't know. My mother never told me the full story. Only that it was dangerous. Daniel took her hands. Then let's find out. Let's learn the truth. Lena's breath hitched. How? We will ask your mother, he said. Maybe there is something she never told you. Hope flickered in Lena's chest, but fear drowned it. What if there was no escape? What if this was her fate? Daniel brushed a tear from her cheek. Trust me. Lena wanted to. But trust would not save him from turning to stone. Still she nodded. Tomorrow we will ask her. Daniel smiled and kissed her forehead. Good. Then we will fight this curse together. But deep in her heart Lena knew. Some things could never be changed. The morning sun streamed through the trees as Lena and Daniel walked toward her mother's cottage. Lena's heart felt heavy, her hands cold despite the warmth of the day. Everything will be fine, Daniel said, squeezing her fingers. I don't believe in curses. Lena pulled her hand away. It doesn't matter what you believe, Daniel. It's real. Daniel chuckled softly. Lena, listen to yourself. How can a woman turn a man into stone? It's impossible. She swallowed hard. My mother told me. He sighed. Because she wants to protect you. But she's wrong. You're just afraid. Lena stopped walking. I am afraid. Afraid of losing you. Daniel cupped her face. Then don't push me away. Tears burned her eyes. If we are together. You will die, Daniel. Daniel shook his head. No, I won't. He kissed her softly, his lips warm against hers. For a moment, she melted into him, wanting to believe his words. But the fear never left. I can prove it, Daniel whispered. Lena's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Daniel took both of her hands. We spend the night together. Nothing will happen, and then you will see. Lena's breath caught. Oh, I can't. Daniel's grip tightened. You love me, don't you? She nodded, her heart breaking. Then trust me, he said. Lena trembled. She wanted to pull away, to scream, to run. But Daniel held her close, whispering words of love, of promises, of forever. And against every warning in her heart, she gave in. That night, under the silver glow of the moon, Daniel kissed Lena and held her close. See, he whispered. Nothing is happening. Lena wanted to believe him. She traced his face with her fingers, memorizing every line, every breath. But then, a cold wind rushed through the room. Daniel gasped, his body stiffening. His hands grew cold. His skin turned pale. Lena's heart pounded. Daniel. His eyes widened in horror as his lips parted to speak, but no words came. Then before her eyes, his body turned gray. His warm skin hardened into stone. His fingers frozen in place. Lena screamed. Oh, no, no, no. She reached for him, shaking his shoulders. Daniel, please. Wake up. But it was too late. The man she loved was gone. All that remained was a cold, lifeless statue. His face still frozen in a look of disbelief. Tears streamed down Lena's face as she fell to her knees. She had tried to warn him. Now she was alone. Again. Lena sat on the floor, her hands gripping the cold stone of Daniel's arm. His once warm body was now lifeless, his face frozen in shock. No. No, 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 she whispered, shaking her head. She traced his cheek with trembling fingers, but it was hard, unfeeling. His eyes, which once held love and fire, were empty now, just stone. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her chest, gasping for air. I told you, she sobbed. I told you this would happen. The house was silent. Only the sound of her weeping filled the air. The wind outside howled, as if mourning with her. She had been so careful. She had spent her whole life avoiding love, avoiding men, avoiding this. And yet Daniel had made her believe, just for a moment, that she could escape her fate. Now he was gone. She felt something sharp twist inside her. A pain so deep it felt like her heart was being torn apart. She had killed the man she loved. No, she whispered, shaking her head violently. Not killed. It's the curse. It wasn't me. But it didn't matter. The result was the same. Daniel was never coming back. The door burst open and Lena's mother, Miriam, stepped inside. She stopped in her tracks, her eyes going wide as they fell on the stone figure standing in the middle of the room. Oh, my sweet child, her voice was heavy with sorrow. Lena turned to her, her face wet with tears. Mother, she choked, he's gone. Miriam closed her eyes, as if she had already known this would happen. Slowly, she walked forward and knelt beside her daughter, wrapping her in a tight embrace. "I warned you, Lena." Her voice was not angry, only filled with pain. "This curse cannot be broken." Lena gritted her teeth. "There must be a way." Miriam sighed, stroking her daughter's hair. "If there was, your grandmother would have found it." Lena's body trembled. "I can't live like this. I can't," she let out a sharp sob. "I loved him." "I know," her mother whispered. "And that is why it hurts." Lena pulled away, wiping her face. "There has to be something. Pill. Potion. Anything." Miriam looked at her for a long time. Then slowly, she stood and walked to the chest in the corner of the room. She opened it, pulling out an old leather-bound book. Its pages were yellowed, its edges frayed. Lena's breath hitched. "What is that?" Miriam hesitated. "The only thing your grandmother left behind." She placed the book on the table and opened it, flipping through pages filled with strange symbols and words written in faded ink. Then she stopped. Lena leaned forward, her heart racing. "What does it say?" Miriam traced the words with her fingers. "It speaks of the curse. Of how it began." Lena swallowed hard. "And how to end it." Miriam's eyes flicked to her daughter's, hesitation clear in her gaze. "There is one way." Lena's heart pounded. "Tell me." Miriam exhaled deeply. "But the price may be more than you can bear." Lena didn't care. She would give anything to bring Daniel back. She reached for her mother's hand, her grip firm. "Tell me what I have to do." Lena stood frozen, staring at Daniel's stone body. His face, once filled with love, was now lifeless. His strong arms, which had held her so gently, were hard and cold. This wasn't supposed to happen. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she reached out, touching his frozen face. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking. A firm hand grabbed her shoulder. She turned sharply to see her mother, Miriam, standing behind her. Her face was pale, her eyes full of sorrow. "We have to move him," Miriam said softly. Lena blinked. "Move him." Miriam's grip tightened. "The villagers will come looking for him. If they see this, they won't understand." Lena swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" Miriam sighed. "Lena, think. A man spends the night with you and disappears. Then a statue appears in your home. What do you think they'll say?" Lena felt a cold chill run down her spine. "They'll call me a monster," she whispered. Miriam nodded grimly. "Or worse. We can't let that happen." Lena wiped her tears, her hands shaking. "Where can we take him?" Miriam glanced toward the window. "The old storage house near the woods. No one goes there anymore." Lena's heart ached at the thought of locking Daniel away, but she knew her mother was right. They had to hide him. Moving him was harder than Lena expected. His stone body was impossibly heavy, each step a struggle. Miriam led the way through the quiet village, making sure no one saw them. The storage house stood at the edge of the woods, abandoned and forgotten. Its wooden door creaked as Miriam pushed it open. Dust swirled in the air, the scent of damp wood filling their noses. With great effort, they lowered Daniel's statue onto the ground. Moonlight streamed through the cracks in the roof, casting eerie shadows over his frozen form. Lena knelt beside him, her fingers trailing over his stone hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Miriam placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come, child." Lena hesitated. Then, with one last look at Daniel, she stood. Miriam pulled the door shut, locking the truth away in darkness. But deep inside, Lena knew. Secrets never stayed buried forever. What do you think will happen next in this captivating story? If you're loving it so far, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for updates. You won't want to miss the thrilling continuation in part 2.